Initially, I didn't know what to call it. But I remember when I first felt it, I hated the way it made me feel, but still I couldn't let people know that I held it. It weakened me, but I refused to let people see the weak in me. It felt like it was eating me from the inside out. And it made me want to tear the uneasiness from my insides out. My heartbeat, suited for house music, along with the heart pace, each thought race, no route to it. The nervousness, the worry, it sprouts too quick. The panic becomes organic, and I guess I just gotta plow through it. So I do my best to remain calm as the butterflies in my stomach result in sweaty palms. Friends keep asking me why I'm so quiet. I tell them I'm just tired and that nothing's wrong, while all along I just want to go home and be alone. Because large crowds make me feel small and as though I'm in danger, and I desperately try to keep my eye on every single stranger. Meeting a bunch of new people brings so much pressure to my chest, and I don't talk a lot. I often watch and I let them do the rest. Sometimes I'm scared to succeed. I mean, what if I can't keep it up? Scared of how I'm perceived by the people who show me love. Thinking of the worst outcomes, I worry about my friends and family, constantly wondering if we'll all soon see a tragedy. I'm asking God to protect them and to look after me while I'm looking over my shoulder and around every corner to make sure no one is after me. And I know that's irrational, but sometimes I feel so nervous I don't even speak properly. I know what I want to say, but the message I try to convey comes out sloppy. See, it's the overthinking, the self-consciousness, the sleepless nights, the nauseousness, the feeling as though I can barely breathe. But I try not to be obvious. I feel terrified and paralyzed, and yet I force a smile through all of it. Self-diagnosis, I'm calling it. This is anxiety, and it resides in me so vibrantly, but I keep it inside of me, quietly, outwardly smiling. Inward emotions collide so violently, and if I can be a person who struggles with a moderate level of anxiety, imagine those who deal with it severely and how every day for them is a fight to breathe, a fight for peace, a fight to be okay.
Like a wow moment for me. I went to this church from the age of 2 to the age of 16, and I was an anxious, depressed little girl, and so God has brought me full circle. So I want to tell you a little bit about God's sense of humor. The thing that causes me the greatest anxiety, that I have to work on the most, is the fear of being noticed. What more profound way is there but standing in front of a crowd talking about anxiety, right? So, I'm just like, God, you just cease to amaze me. So I did bring my notes, because if not, I would go on for days about this. And so I'm trying to keep myself accountable to the time that we have tonight, and share with you some tools. But I will tell you, it's a personal testimony as to how well the tools work, because I haven't fainted yet. So I was experiencing anxiety about going over the time limit today. Then I created the story in my head that the leaders would kick me off the stage if I didn't get done in time. And that would be quite embarrassing, not to mention a lot of other things. And so I began to think about that, and I was like, I have created a story in my head about this. Well, yes, I do need to contain this. There's got to be some other thing I can do. So I created some handouts, and so if you want to look at those later when you get home, it'll help me to stay within the boundaries, knowing that you have additional information that I didn't have time to talk about tonight, and you can do your own research. So hopefully that will help you. If you could go to the next slide, please. So we all know that life can throw some curveballs, right? And that leads to excessive worry or prolonged sadness. In fact, there was a recent study by the American Psychological Association, the APA, that revealed 87% of Americans feel as though they have faced a constant stream of crisis over the past 2 years. The predominant causes of anxiety from that particular study was the rising cost of everyday essential items, the situation of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and then, of course, the pandemic. Everything comes back to the pandemic. So if those statistics are representative over the overall population, then the majority in this room do not need me to explain what anxiety is. So what I want to talk about tonight is more of how I can help you to deal with that. So for any of you who know me, you know that I'm very goal-oriented and solution-focused. And so I'm going to share a little bit about how anxiety affects us mentally, physically, emotionally, and of course spiritually. But my main goal is to teach you how to deal with it, how to reduce anxiety, and then to increase peace in your life. So next slide, please. So let's talk about anxiety. There are so many words that, I'm sorry, the one before that. Yes. There's so many words that people use interchangeably with anxiety, so I wanted to go ahead and throw those out there so that you'll understand where it's all the same thing. It's really labeling a mind-body response. And so some people use the words fear, stress, dread, angst, doubt, concern, worry, uneasy, panic, apprehensive, uncertain, nervous, or afraid. And sometimes I'll ask someone, are you anxious? Oh, no, I'm not anxious. I'm just concerned. Oh, well, you're anxious then. No, I'm not anxious. I'm just concerned. So I want you all to realize, like, we are encompassing all of this. And you've probably heard some others, too. And the next slide, please. So I know it's tiny, but I'm going to say this out loud. The Wikipedia definition of anxiety is an emotion characterized by an unpleasant state of inner turmoil and includes subjectively unpleasant feelings of dread over anticipated events. And then anxiety, a diagnosis given by professionals, and we use the Diagnosis of Statistical Manual. It is a specific criteria described as excessive worry about a variety of topics, events, or activities. It occurs more often than not for at least 6 months and is clearly excessive. It's difficult to control, accompanied by at least 3 physical or cognitive symptoms, and is present more hours than not. And so that would be an actual disorder. But we all have anxiety in our lives, and so we're going to talk about that. Next slide. So I'm going to sum it up in just a few words. Anxiety is increased when we spend too much time and energy focused on the future. I want you to think about the things mentioned in the APA survey regarding the biggest fears of Americans right now, which are money, war, and the pandemic. So life absolutely throws curveballs at us, but anxiety is heightened from the fear of the curveballs. So perhaps you've been up to bat in this game of life, and you've been hit by a curveball, or you've seen someone else be hit by a curveball. Then we become fearful that every pitch in life is going to knock us down. So, we fear that the war will lead to whatever your mind has created, that the current inflation will lead to whatever your mind has created, or that the pandemic will cause whatever your mind has created. And that's how anxiety plays out. So again, there's some real challenges that we face, and many more that you can list, I'm sure. But it's mostly caused when we take what is and we create a fear of what could happen. So do you recall the fear of running out of toilet paper in 2020? I don't know if anybody actually ran out of toilet paper in 2020. But what I can tell you is if they did, my guess is they found another resource, wouldn't you think? But there was sheer panic happening over someone saying we're going to run out of toilet paper. So that's an example. So here's a quote that I wanted to mention. It's by someone named Anonymous, and I don't think it's the hacker group. But I'm an old man and have known a great many troubles, most of which never happened. And then the Bible says, therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring its own worries. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Amen? Amen. Let's stay in today. So the scripture reference is not to shame us, okay? In fact, I believe that God knew this is something we would all struggle with, and that adding tomorrow's troubles to today's troubles would certainly overwhelm us. And that's why we're reminded time and time again in scripture not to worry. In fact, did you know that fear not, do not be afraid, do not be anxious, those things, all those interchangeable words, is mentioned in the Bible 365 times. My theory, and I know theologian, but I have a feeling some of y'all had the same theory. God knew we would need to be reminded every single day. Next slide, please. So I know we're talking about anxiety tonight, but I wanted to add this in here because what you'll learn will also help with depression. And the reason is because I'm going to sum up depression for you. It increases when we spend too much time and energy focused on the past. So this quote from Catherine Mansfield says, "Make it a rule of life never to regret and never to look back. Regret is an appalling waste of energy. You can't build on it. It's only good for wallowing in." And then Isaiah 43:18 says, "Forget the former things, do not dwell on the past." Again, I don't think God's word is meant to shame us. It's an instruction book on how to live with hope and peace. Next slide. All right, so I want to take just a minute for you to ask yourself, like, where is your focus? Where do you spend the most of your time and energy? And then I want you to think about your body's response to past and future focus. We call that stress. Let's talk about stress. What is stress and what role does it play in our emotions? I would say that the dominant driver of the addiction cycle is what I hear in my office is stress. After a stressful day, I go shopping, or I drink a few beers, take a few pills, smoke weed, watch pornography. You fill in the blank. It's because it helps me calm down and sleep. Have you ever heard that? Or maybe said it yourself? Stress. So what is stress? There's reasons that we experience stress. Stress is a state of physical, mental, and or emotional strain or tension resulting from demanding circumstances. Does anyone here feel the demands of life? Yeah. Yeah. So it could be physical demands. It could be the expectations of others that we feel there's a demand on our life. It could be the demand of trying to live a life free of sin. Perhaps something in your job, the traffic, financials, your own internal demands to live up to some perceived perfection or something like that. And so stress is a physical expression of our flight or fight mechanism. A stress response is triggered by a threatening situation which prepares us to confront or flee a possible danger, and that would help for immediate danger. But unfortunately, the stress response is also triggered by tense situations and our perception of danger. And that's whether it's physical danger, emotional danger, mental danger, whatever that might be. All right, next slide, please. So stress can be acute or chronic in nature. Acute stress is a short-term response by the body's sympathetic nervous system. How long acute stress lasts, it may vary from a few minutes to a few weeks. During an acute stress response, the body begins to release 17 different hormones. Some of those are adrenaline and noradrenaline, so that's what gets that heart racing. In fact, acute stress can be a positive thing when facing things such as the need to run from a bear, or getting ready to run in the Olympics, standing in front of a group talking about anxiety. It gives the body that extra boost to be able to take care of that special event, whatever that might be. But chronic stress occurs when acute stress responses keep the body on alert continuously. It has negative effects on your health. The ongoing stress response causes the body to release a chemical called ACTH, and I cannot pronounce the whole thing, so I used the acronym. And it's otherwise known as the stress hormone. It then triggers the production of the release of cortisol. In fact, we can become addicted to cortisol. or at least comfortable with it. And in those cases, we need to be more mindful of the need to reset what I call our baseline, which will require the same process of recovery as other addictions. You have to recognize that that's what's happening. When these chemicals are released and a few physical responses occur, you may have noticed those when you've had stress, is your blood sugar level rises, additional red blood cells are released, peripheral blood vessels constrict, blood pressure rises, and digestion stops. Okay? I think we're one ahead on the PowerPoint. Yep, sorry. So stress causes chemical changes in the body that, left unchecked, can have negative effects on mental, physical, and emotional health, and let's face it, spiritual health too. The stress hormone, when out of balance, is an inflammatant to the system, but when it's in balance, is an anti-inflammatory to the system. Cortisol is one of the hormones associated with waking and sleeping. So the levels of cortisol naturally fluctuate during the day. They're highest in the morning, or they should be, to help us wake up, and lowest at night to help us sleep. So if you tend to be in a more depressed state, your cortisol levels are probably not high enough in the morning. And if you have insomnia, anxiety, and can't sleep, they're probably too high at night. So when chronic stress stimulates cortisol production, the daily cycle of cortisol level is disrupted. And the imbalance causes our health to weaken over time. And so, again, you'll have anxiety, depression, insomnia, weight gain, cancer, Alzheimer's disease, heart disease, skin disorders, acute and chronic pain, and many others. So there is a threshold between healthy levels of cortisol at the optimal time of day and then unhealthy levels. And those who have lived with chronic stress have altered their baselines, and they're always teetering right up against that threshold. So tonight I want to teach you how to readjust your baseline so that you have that greater distance to travel between, where you are and that overwhelmed state. So now that we know a little bit about anxiety and depression and the role that stress plays, let's talk to you about what you can do about it, because that's what we all want to know, right? So we're going to go to the next slide, and it says, so how can we have hope and peace in a world full of anxiety and depression? I feel like some of my slides are missing. Okay. I'll move on. We can learn to spend more time and energy focused on the present, okay? So Isaiah 26:3 says, you will keep perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast. That's unwavering in focus because they trust in you. And then a quote by an author unknown says, peace. It does not mean to be in a place where there's no noise, trouble, or hard work. It means to be in the midst of those things and still be calm in your heart. So I want to recognize a challenge that many people face, and that is the fear of hope and peace. Have you ever heard someone say, I don't want to get my hopes up for being let down? That's a fear of hope. Or, it's peaceful, it's pretty scary, it's probably the calm before the storm. That's fear. So I can't tell you how many times I hear that. If you have depression and anxiety about having hope and peace, then you're stuck in a vicious cycle, and that cycle needs to be hijacked. So think about it. I'm depressed because I don't want to have hope. For fear, I'll be depressed. Right? But we believe it, don't we? We believe it. So, what you're saying is, I can control where I am. The other direction, I'm anxious about moments of peace. For fear, it will lead to anxiety. So let that settle into your thinking. And ask yourself, am I fearful of hope and peace? What I want you to realize is that hope and peace are not alternate places of reality. They are force shields. They are force shields that help us weather the storms of life. They're experienced simultaneously and in spite of the challenges. When we cannot see a way through a situation, when you cannot find your force field, you can focus on the promises of God. And there are too many to list here, but I encourage you to study those because you can keep going back to those. And I encourage you to allow yourself to hope and allow yourself to enjoy moments of peace, because those are the moments where we can rest, recharge, and resist the fiery darts. If we could stop seeing hope and peace as an up and down state that happens when life doesn't have challenges, which I don't know when that is, but you can keep waiting on it if you want to, but see it as a force shield. Someone told me earlier today, which I thought was kind of neat, and I'm drawing a blank on the guys' names, but where they were thrown into the fiery furnace for not bowing down, and they said there was a fourth person there. When they opened up the furnace, they didn't come running out. They were still in there dancing around worshiping. They were in the force shield. I thought that was really cool. All right. So as I mentioned earlier, all the studies show the majority of you have some understanding. So, we're going to talk about the tools, and I realize it's not enough to tell you just what you need to do, and I'm hoping you're going to learn some how-tos today. Obviously, there's going to be some things that just doesn't relate to you, and I just hope that everyone can take away at least a couple of nuggets for your life. So I want to, talk about several ways to relieve stress, whether it's manifesting as anxiety, depression, or some other way. And ultimately, I want to teach you how to distance your baseline from the threshold of stress. So I'm just going to hit the highlights of these things. You probably received a box of raisins when you came in. Those were not for a snack. There's going to be something we're going to go over in a little while. So hold on to those. Don't eat them. I will let you know when we're going to open those. But I want you to keep in mind these tools that I have listed are just some that I think of and that I use myself. But there are lots of other great ideas. Different counselors use different things. And, even friends that have gone through anxiety could probably help you as well. But just for the sake of tonight, I want to hit these and give you a little bit of it. And again, it should be on your resource paper. But journaling. This is not a diary. This is not something you're going to go back in 5 years and look at and reminisce about, okay? This is a time to free flow write exactly what you're thinking and feeling for about 5 to 10 minutes, just to clear the mind of all the things that's floating around. And even if you want to write, I don't know why Cindy told me to do this. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. Go ahead and write that down. It's fine. Just go with it. Flow with it. See what is floating around in your brain. And what that will do is it helps you to use the whole brain to process what's been floating around in your emotional brain, okay? It forces that frontal lobe of the brain to play a role in your processing. So then I want you to immediately burn it or shred it. Yes, unless you're writing a Hollywood movie, you don't need to hold on to that junk. We can write some Hollywood movies in our head, right? Whew, and think it's true. The second one is physical activity. This is not work. If you work on a job where you are physical, this ain't it. This ain't it. This is something you enjoy doing, such as walking, running, exercise, bike riding, hunting, swimming, fishing, hiking, something physical, okay? Ideally, it would be 3 days a week for about 20 minutes. If all you can do is 2 days a week or 3 days a month, you're going to help yourself. Just do it. Physical activity really helps to reset the brain. Nutrition. This ain't no special diet, but what I will tell you is there are certain foods, such as seafood, salmon in particular, that have nutrients that promote brain health. Other things would be almonds, blueberries, chamomile, turmeric, dark chocolate, yogurt, green tea, and some others. Again, research that if you're interested. And then other foods can cause increased anxiety, such as caffeine, refined sugar, foods that cause digestive issues, such as reflux, your fried foods, McDonald's is usually out, MSG, and some other food dyes. Many people don't realize that the symptoms of food sensitivity can mimic the same symptoms of anxiety. Not everyone gets the hives and the asthma and that kind of thing. Some of us our internal systems have the hives going on. And then it can be helpful if you keep a food mood diary. What I say for about 30 days, don't change a thing, but what did I eat? And then kind of like, how am I feeling today? What's going on for me? Scale to, 0 to 10. How anxious am I? How depressed am I? Whatever that is. After 30 days, see if you see a connection. If you see a connection, say, let's try next month and see if when I take those things in, I become more anxious or depressed. No, it didn't happen that time. Maybe that's not it. So test that out, because it really does make a huge difference. And then supplements. A deficiency in certain vitamins and minerals can increase stress, anxiety, and depression. In addition, the body's response to stress can also deplete our body of some vitamins and minerals, okay? So one example is that magnesium levels are reduced by chronic stress. Low magnesium leads to insomnia. And I say lack of sleep leads to everything. The next one is high definition blue light and green light screen time. So our high definition blue light and green light world is a wonderful thing. It brings things into clarity that's almost lifelike at times, right? However, there's been lots of studies, and there's more to come, I'm sure, that those do have side effects on anxiety, depression, insomnia. ADHD can cause bipolar cycles to be more rapid, increased blood pressure, eye damage, diabetes, weight gain. The studies are still happening. So there's several ways to reduce this exposure. It's not just about giving up your devices. I ain't up here to tell you to turn it off and throw it away. There are light filters, there are glasses, there are light bulb management. There are some things you can do. And yes, sometimes it is managing screen time, especially if it's just before bedtime, because you're rising up that cortisol level and you're not going to sleep as well. Even though you're tired, your body is exhausted, your brain is still stimulated. And one thing I didn't mention is one of the major causes of panic attacks in the middle of the night is reflux. Reflux automatically trips our fight, flight, or freeze. And so you wake up and you're like, oh, I don't know why I'm having a panic attack. You didn't know it, but you had reflux. So watch that, what it is that you take in before bedtime. And then the next one is self-care. So what does self-care mean to you? Many of us grew up thinking self-care meant you were selfish, right? Or you're lazy, or you're not doing anything with purpose, right? I'm like, believe me, those around me know that my self-care has a purpose. It's to keep me calmer. So what can you do to relax, even if it's for a few moments, okay? Reading a book, listening to music, going for a walk, getting a massage, sitting by a fire, watching a sunrise or sunset. Just find you some, what I call, me time. And then healthy, fun hobbies. This is not playing Hungry Hippo with your kiddos, all right? This is something that you enjoy doing that you almost lose track of time. It could be painting, puzzles, basketball, golfing, knitting, playing music, really any number of things. And I tell people, think back to when you were a child. Can you think of the things that you really enjoyed? How can you create that in adulthood? Connections with others. Having the support of others can remind us that we're not alone. It could be family, friends, a support group, or a sports team. This place is just awesome, right? This is just, I was just watching how everyone was connecting, during the music. It's like there was just this singing together and so forth. I mean, it's just a great thing. But, even outside of this, is maybe you can make some friends here and have coffee with them on a Saturday morning or something. Get that connection. It makes a difference in our baseline. And then healthy boundaries. Learn to say no to those things that are not healthy or meaningful for you. That is people, places, activities, and things. We only have so much time and energy to invest. Where do you want to invest that? What is meaningful to you? And they can all be good things. but that doesn't mean that it's for you to do. You are always saying no to someone. And when you don't say no to other things, you say no to yourself being healthy, happy, and whole. Avoid procrastination. Having a long to-do list and swirling around in your head can cause so much stress, okay? So as I mentioned previously, internal or external demands lead to stress. And so the sooner you take care of the things that you will need to do at some point in time, the more free your mind will be. Procrastination is a close friend to anxiety. So write down your to-do list, prioritize it, give yourself realistic deadlines, work your way down the list, whatever that is. But don't just have it swirling around in your head, and do it before your wife asks you 50 times. Or husband. I shouldn't be stereotypical here. Or BFF. So I'm going to mention counseling, right? I mean, of course, being a counselor, I'm going to mention that one. But counseling is a safe place to process your thoughts and emotions, a place to learn and practice tools, and then possibly experience some things like neurofeedback, EMDR, other types of therapy to address that. So, it helps. And then the next few I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to go into them a little bit more. We're actually going to practice a couple of them. But gratitude, mindfulness, and deep breathing. All right, the next slide. All right. I cannot tell you how important gratitude is in overcoming anxiety and depression. Practicing gratitude is not denying the reality. It's not pretending that everything is fine. It's a way of grounding us and balancing our emotions. So people often want to choose an emotion, and when I say ride it like the wind, regardless of whether it takes you into a deep, dark pit or whatever. But if you can learn to practice gratitude in every situation, you'll find that your emotions are balanced and everything just gets easier. Again, we're constantly being mindful of that cortisol. How do we bring it back to balance? How do we bring it back to balance? I want to give an example using something I think we're familiar with, and that would be the increased gas prices. Yeah? All right. When I first heard that gas prices were starting to rise, I immediately had fear. Oh my goodness, how am I going to get to work? I am a workaholic. Okay, that's my addiction. And that meant I wouldn't make enough money to pay my bills, and then my story kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I won't go into all the details, but that did lead to me feeling powerless, sad, discouraged, and probably a few other things along the way too. And I threw in my gratitude. I realized that I'm grateful I have a vehicle in which to put that gas in and a job where I can go. After all, not everyone in the world has that, right? So I began to think of the parts of the situation that I had control over. I can't control the gas prices. I have a few ideas of how, but I'm not supposed to do that. I was able to look at what I had been free to spend otherwise and make adjustments in that area. In fact, I had gotten into the habit of stopping at a restaurant almost every Tuesday because that was my stressful day. I was able to cut out that one trip to the restaurant on my way home and eat at home instead, and that covered the extra money that I would spend on gas until the prices come back down. So do you see how I acknowledged my emotions? I also found something within that situation I'm grateful for, and that led to my ability to think of things that I have control over and the idea that this situation will not last forever. It's likely not going to end up the way my mind first created it, and that led to hope. I used the and to describe that as they are simultaneously happening. Gas prices didn't change while I was going through all that, did they? But in daily lives, I want you to think about what your and would be. Philippians 4:6-7 says, be anxious about nothing. Does anybody know what nothing means? Nothing. It means nothing. There's like no trick to that word at all. But in every situation, and yes, that's every situation, there's no situation too big or too small, that by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, that's gratefulness, Present your request to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds. Doesn't say it will take you to a special place. Doesn't say that all your problems are going to go away. It says it will take you to a peace that you can't understand, right? So, because why is that? Because you've changed your worry into hope. It will guard your heart and mind if you have gratefulness. And that's our force shield. Okay? The next one. So the next tool I want to focus on today is mindfulness meditation. Many times we attribute that word to, some New Age religious practice of a bald man sitting on a pillow with gong in hand and incense burning. Right? Okay, so the truth is, if you have struggled with anxiety or depression, or really some combination of the two, you are an expert at mindfulness and meditation. But with one simple difference: the object and content of your thinking. You can sit and think 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 about something, right? But it's usually something negative. You are an expert. You have the skill set. Mindfulness is paying attention to the present moment experience with open curiosity and a willingness to be with what is right here and right now. The moment one gives close attention to anything, even a blade of grass, it becomes a mysterious, awesome, indescribably magnificent world in itself. By Henry Miller. And then I love this one by Dorothy Harson. Linger longer in the unrepeatable present. When you're in the past or you're in the future, you don't even have a present. It goes by and you don't even know it. So this is what I want you to learn today. But why learn it? Mindfulness has positive effects mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. It increases our ability to cope with stress, pain, and challenges of everyday life, to deal with disturbing events with grace and composure, to be fully present and alive in this moment. It minimizes the effects of stress on your health. It helps you to be more connected with others, yourself, and God. And it helps you to express your emotions in a healthy way. When I become anxious, I become irritable. I don't know who else does when that happens to me. The next one. All right. I want to share a little bit about our breath. Our breath is a very powerful tool. In fact, theologians have studied the original name of God. We call it Yahweh, right? But they've come to believe that the word is unpronounceable in any language. It has no vowels. We made it up. We added to it. It is actually the sound of our breath. So every time you breathe, you're saying the name of God in its purest form. Yeah, I've actually tested that. I'm like, it's exactly what that is, right? That is pretty cool. Next slide, please. So today, we're going to practice a few very simple and practical mindfulness exercises without pulling out your floor pillow, no gong or incense, okay? I don't know about you, but there are a few days I have time for that. It's fine if you do, but I tend to not be able to. So first, we're going to use that tool that I just shared with you. It's a tool that's been with you since your first moment of life, and that is your breath. We're going to help you train that so that you can reset that baseline. So when I'm talking about our breath, it's not just our typical breathing when we're trying to reset our baseline. I want you to think about blowing out the candles on your birthday cake. For some of us, it's far more than others. But let's just imagine that it's a cake with several candles that takes a little bit of force, but not so much that we're going to pass out right here, okay, or that we're going to set the building on fire. But I'm going to ask you to breathe in, and when I ask you to do that, you're going to take a slow, deep breath, which lasts about 5 seconds, and then you're going to release the breath as though you're blowing out those few candles, okay? And then I want you to take a few moments to just notice if you're holding tension or anything like that in your body, okay? And so this is something that can be done pretty much anywhere. All right, so what I'm going to ask you all to do right now is just to take a few seconds, and I want you to do what I call a body scan, and just ask yourself, where do I notice tightness, tension, or pain? And then what I'm going to have you do is take a deep breath, and I'm going to count to 5, and then I want you to blow out those candles, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now blow out your candles. All right. We're going to do it one more time, and what I want you to do when you're taking in that deep breath, I want you to think a positive thought. It could be breathe in peace. You could think of something else, or anything that's positive. And then when you blow out, I want you to think of something you want to get rid of, such as breathe out anxiety. Okay, so I'm going to count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now blow out that anxiety. Now I want you to do that body scan. Do you notice tightness, tension, or pain? Has it changed any at all? It's amazing what our breath can do. So that breathing exercise, like I said, can be done most anywhere. If you do that and you're in a car with someone and they're like, "Are you all right?" You can say, "I am now. I'm all good," right? So what I want you to do, though, is if you will do that on a regular basis, we're always breathing, but if you do it on a regular basis, you're actually going to bring yourself that baseline, bring it down, bring it down, bring it down before you get to the overwhelmed state. Obviously, you can use this if you end up in the overwhelmed state, but my job is to help you to prevent it from happening. So if you, again, do this on a regular basis, then you're going to notice that you stay at a lower baseline, okay? And then second, we're going to practice, it's very similar, but it's called the 3 breaths. And this is to bring our attention to the present and calm our emotions. And it's something that takes a few minutes, so you may not be able to do it just anywhere. But if you can do it once a day, you're just going to help your system to clear out. And in this exercise, you're going to be blowing out just like you did with the other one, blowing out those candles. But we'll have a different mental focus, okay? So, you know, some people prefer to close their eyes and some do not. I don't have a preference, don't matter to me. But don't do this when you're driving if you're going to close your eyes. But I want you to just, what I want you to do is you're going to listen to just my prompting, okay? And so we're going to first take that deep breath for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then blow that out. Now I want you to breathe normally, and I want you to take this moment to bring your awareness to the present environment where you are right here and right now. What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you feel? What do you taste? What do you see? Just notice what is connecting to your 5 senses right now. Now we're going to take another deep breath of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and blow that out. Now as you breathe normally, I want you to take a moment to bring your awareness to your internal world. What thoughts are you noticing? What emotions are you feeling? Are you noticing any of those areas of tightness, tension, or pain? Often our biggest fears are emotions, but there's no need to fear them. Just notice them, and they'll pass like the wind. Don't judge them. Don't try to change them. Just notice them and honor them for just a few seconds. All right, we're going to take the third and final deep breath of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and blow it out. Now, as you breathe normally, I want you to take a moment to bring your awareness to God. Notice any connection that you might have with God right now. Is he speaking to you? Does it seem silent? What is the awareness of your connection with God? So this technique is all about connection. We oftentimes want to disconnect, or in the addiction world, we call it numbing ourselves. We don't want to connect to our environment. We don't want to connect to ourselves, especially our emotions. And we're not really interested in connecting to God often. So if you'll just connect to the here and now, that's just so much more manageable. Again, whatever the emotion is, just honor it. It will pass. So the third thing I'm going to go over, and this is a little longer exercise, but what I will tell you is that I think everyone here eats at least once a day. If you don't, we need to have a talk. Because I need to know how you do that, for one thing. But that's not healthy. So you can take out your raisins, and no, don't start eating them yet. But you can take out your box of raisins. I'm going to teach you how to do what's called mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR. There's actually a website you can visit, and it should be on your resource page. There's lots of videos on there. There's a free 8-week online course that will teach you various techniques and so forth. But the one particular one I'm going to do today is the raisin meditation. But what I want you to realize, if you were given that, but if you don't like raisins or, don't want to participate, then if you have some other type of food or drink, you can use that. Feel free to jump in. Raisins are just something that's not real messy, and so we use that in talks, in groups and so forth. But you can do this every time that you eat. And again, it's going to help your baseline. So what I want you to do is open the box and take out one raisin. And we're going to pay attention to the raisin. That's what this meditation is all about. But again, if you're sitting and you're eating your chicken or whatever that is, just you will pay attention to the raisin. So I want you to look at the raisin, and I want you to pretend for a moment like you've never, ever seen a raisin before. Like you just landed from Mars, and you wonder, what in the world is this object? You may not even know that it's edible. Okay? So just pay attention to the raisin. So you're looking at it. How does the light hit it? You're seeing that maybe there's some crevices and indentions. Maybe wrinkled. Maybe it looks different whether you're looking at it from one side or the other. Think about its color. It could be black. It might be brown, or maybe has some gold in there. Just notice what you see, just for a moment. Now I want you to think about what it feels like as you touch it. Roll it around in your fingers. What do you notice? Maybe it's squishy. Just think of how you would describe the way that it feels. Perhaps it has a smell. Can you smell anything? Now I'm going to suggest you try to do something that sounds kind of strange. Can you hear it? You might have to roll it around a little bit just to see if it makes any popping sounds or whatever. Just want to know what you hear. Now I want you to take the raisin and place it in your mouth. Do not chew it. Do not swallow it. Just put it in your mouth. We're going to, the tendency when we have food is pop it in and chew it and swallow, right? So we're going to make this just a little slower process tonight. If you can, I want you to gently break it with your teeth, just enough to break it, to feel to taste that flavor. I know it's hard to keep from chewing it, especially when you know you got more in the box right there, right? Just chew this one, get another one. But I want you to just notice how it tastes, okay? And you can chew it a little bit, just noticing how it tastes. As you slowly chew it, just notice, can you hear something? Do you smell something? How do you feel it in your mouth as you chew that up? And you can chew it at this point until it's gone and you've swallowed it. Next slide, please. What'd you learn about yourself? Woo! Without judging yourself, how much anxiety did you have during that exercise? I mean, maybe your mind wandered to something like in the past or in the future, or like how much longer before I can eat this thing, or how many thought this feels really weird and silly? All right, yeah. So, how many of you thought just hurry up and eat the raisin already? I have to admit, I actually shortened the version of the raisin meditation, so that probably says a little something about me, right? There is a longer version. But the challenge you faced is an indication of how your mind typically works in the past or in the future, or a combination of both. And it's an indication of your need to really practice on living in the present, that place of hope and peace. All right, next one. So learning to live in the present takes practice, really a daily reminder. Remember, God said 365 times, so, write it. Maybe you can write one of those verses for every day of the year on your calendar. But it really is a great way to lower your baseline. As you're going through your day, just see if you can bring the same sense of curiosity and exploration to the things in your daily life, like walking the dog, washing dishes, putting gas in your car, brushing your teeth, taking a shower, driving down the road. Any meal that you eat, you can do exactly what we just did. It is so helpful. Pay attention to things where you can just really notice where you are and what you're doing. Learning to live in the present really requires being mindful of those 5 senses. What do you see, hear, taste, smell, and touch? Right here, right now. There's really no guesswork. It's pretty simple, isn't it? It is what it is. The next slide. So I'm going to bring up something I think you all might be familiar with. But I want you to look through a different lens at this probably today. Oftentimes we recite things without giving them a deeper thought. Perhaps you have, but I want to talk about it a little bit more in the face of the anxiety. So perhaps it'll have a different impact on you from this day forward. It says, God, grant me the serenity. That is the state of being calm, peaceful, and untroubled. To accept the things I cannot change. That's the past and the future. Courage to change the things I can, my present situation and my goals. Wisdom to know the difference. That's doing that self-evaluation. Living one day at a time. Oh yeah, that says live in the present, doesn't it? Enjoying one moment at a time. That's being mindful. Accepting hardship as the pathway to peace. This is peace in the middle of trouble. Taking as he did the sinful world as it is what it is, not as I would have it to be. Wishing things to be different is past and future thinking. Trusting that he will make all things right. Yes, he has the present, the past, and the future in his hands. If I surrender to his will, what does he want me to do right here and right now? That I may be reasonably happy in this life. That means putting several peaceful present days together that add up time. And supremely happy with him forever in the next. And that is our ultimate home. Amen. All right, the next slide. We're going to review just a little bit. So we talked about depression is spending too much time and energy focusing on the past. Anxiety is spending too much time and energy focusing on the future. Hope and peace is when you spend the majority of your time focused on the present. The skill set is the same. What is the difference? The object of your focus. So we want to learn to experience hope and peace by learning to live in the present. Practice this mindfulness on a daily basis. Set yourself a reminder to do so if you have to. But the more you put them into practice, the more it will affect all those hormones that shoot through the body, the more those old thinking patterns will dissipate, and the better you'll feel mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And again, I've provided a resource for you guys to take home. Next slide. Joan Rivers is known for this quote: "Yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, today is God's gift, and that's why we call it the present." Thank you all.